HARK, we are here. It is time for yet another episode of Regroup Phase. This week had an absolute metric ton of previews given to us as a result of the draft gameplay stream that happened last Wednesday. Like they do, developer drafts are fairly fun to watch. They get to analyze the cards as they, pick them out and do some cool stuff with them. There are some FFG Socials previews, there's some creator previews, and we have our final two leaders, our yellow heroism and our red villainy leaders, both of which are interesting designs. Much like last week where we changed up the way we were reviewing stuff, we're going to change up the way we're reviewing stuff this week. We're going to go through all of the FFG Social stuff, we're going to go through the leaders, and we're going to go through creator previews. But given that the draft itself has mostly draft chaff and cards that are pretty much not going to be relevant to the majority of the people that are out there, I'm going to pick and choose a couple of cards that I think are going to be super relevant or at least super cool. We'll definitely cover the rares and the legendaries that were pulled as a part of that if we can get that information. Unfortunately, we don't have all of that information super clear as of yet, but there is going to be a lot of cool stuff to preview, some things that I think are really cool, cards that I think are just neat in themselves just because of what they are. But ultimately, not everything will be reviewed in this episode, but as much as it can be, it's currently up on swudb.com, so check that out. Very good website done by a very cool person. Lots of cool things going on there. So without any further ado, we've got a legendary right off the bat. Let's check it out. First up, directly from FFG Socials, we have the Executor, Might of the Empire, 11 cost command villainy space unit, 12 power, 12 health, Imperial vehicle capital ship. It's got overwhelm. When played, on attack, and when defeated, create 3 TIE Fighter tokens. This is a legendary. Number 262, number 90 out of 262, excuse me, in JTL. We heard talk about there being landscape units in the set. It was apparently further clarified that those landscape treatments were only going to be in the prestige slot of the Carbonite booster box, which I think is a huge miss. I think Executor and the other ships that they would have done a landscape, so not vertical but horizontal, not up and down but left to right. That style of thing would have been really cool in the main set. It would have followed up a previous design from a previous game, and I know we're not supposed to copy everything that's done in previous games, but that was something that was at least thematically cool, and it's Star Wars and everything should be thematically cool, right? Executor here is one of those prestige treatments that we're going to see at a later point. It's going to be really cool. The serialized one is going to go for a crazy amount of money, I'm sure of it. This is an absolutely banger legendary. It costs a ton, but for 11 resources, 10 with Piet, potentially 9 if you have him out while you have 9 resources. You get a 12/12 with Overwhelm, and it also comes in with 3 ties. It also attacks and gives you 3 ties, and when somebody clears this off the board by defeating it, not necessarily returning it to the hand, you get 3 more ties. So on total, theoretically, you can get 9 total ties for the when played, the on attack, and when defeated. That's fantastic. That's 9/9 worth of power, making this thing out to be a 21/21 for 11 spread across multiple turns and actions. This is a legendary that's deserving of the legendary thing. I'm going to be chasing down a couple of these because they're pretty cool. Big butt capital ships are going to be a big thing with Piet being as strong as he is and having that early game being able to get those capital ships out quickly. You get to do resupply carrier, and super laser tech to be able to blitz those resources in. And if you go full green capital ships and go double green, Endless Legions can be a huge play that will absolutely ruin the day of anybody and everybody around you. So that's pretty interesting, pretty fun. Executor's a great card here. I expect to see some play. I'm not sure how good in terms of competitive play this will be, since it is 11. Most games end way before 11 resources come down. But if you stall the game out, who knows? You might see an Executor dropped and blow up your opponent's board with a bunch of damage that comes out and all the TIE Fighters. Next up, 2 previews by Late Night Gaming. There's an event and a unit. This unit is actually really cool, so we're going to start with that. Link in the description below to Late Night Gaming stuff. Relentless Fire Spray. This is a 6 cost, double red, double aggression, space unit, 4 power, 6 health, underworld vehicle transport, on attack, ready this unit. Use this ability only once each round. This is a rare, number 157 out of 262 in JTL. There's not a whole lot to talk about this. It's basically every turn attack twice. That is really good so long as it can survive. Throw a pilot on it so it has some extra health and you're even better. It is double red, so it does require a specific set of gameplay, but we're going to see a leader later on that would benefit very heavily from this card and given what it's able to do. But we've already seen a couple of leaders that might be pretty good with this. We've got the Boba Fett leader, we've got the Vader leader, we have another leader coming down here soon, and then just regular pilots onto this thing are going to add a good amount of value that's going to make this something really interesting to do. This double red in Rio Durant would be super expensive, but it would also give you the ability to have that transport, that saboteur, the extra attack, and all kinds of crazy stuff. So there's some very interesting gameplay that's associated with this card. I don't expect it to see a lot of play in competitive circuits, but it is a fun enough card that I think it's worth talking about, and it does look cool. It's a fire spray. KSC fire sprays are some of the coolest ships in the entirety of Star Wars, and we know how everybody loves the seismic charge. This is what drops those seismic charges. Next up, we have the event, which is Power from Pain. This is a 3-cost Vigilance Villainy Tactic event. Give a unit +1/+0 for this phase for each damage on it. This is an uncommon, number 42 out of 262 in JTL. It's 3-cost grits for a unit that doesn't have grits, or double your grits onto a unit that does have grits. You do have to be wary of removal. You do have to be wary of taking a bunch of damage as a result of playing this card, because you don't get to attack. It's just Power from Pain and then cool opponent response, and then you do your thing. If you play this towards the end of a turn where your opponent doesn't have resources to respond or can't really do anything because they've taken the initiative, this is a great card to play. There's a lot of cards that are like that, with that play more towards the end of a round than the beginning of a round or middle of a round. Power from Pain is an interesting card. It is blue, which is the grit color. So Kira can use this, anything that wants to benefit from that. Krennic can use something like this. Lots of interesting stuff that's going to come from Power from Pain, but we'll have to see if it sees any actual play as a result of it being a fairly low tempo play when it comes to what you can do with this card. Next up, we have 2 previews from KTOD. Link in the description to their video below. We've got a unit and we have an event. Let's check out the unit first. We have here Luke Skywalker. You still with me? We've seen this art. This is a 2-cost command heroism ground unit, 3 power, 2 health. That's all it does. For piloting and 3 with command heroism. If this upgrade would be defeated, you may instead move him to the ground arena as a unit and exhaust him. +3 power, +2 health. Luke Skywalker name, Force Rebel pilot. This is a rare, number 94 out of 262 in JTL. This is actually a very good piloting example. You basically play him as a 2-cost battlefield marine with 1 less health if you need the ground units, or you can pilot him, get a little bit of extra damage in with his attacks, and if the unit gets removed or if this upgrade gets removed, he comes into play as a ground unit instead, representative of his actions at the beginning of Empire Strikes Back. During the Battle of Hoth, very good card. I think this will see a fair amount of play in green Rebel decks or green pilot decks. Wedge makes it a 2-cost, which is actually pretty good. I might have to update my Wedge deck to include 1 or 2 Luke Skywalkers. I don't know if you run 3 copies of this card because it is a unique, and having the pilot and then drop the unit, if you have another one of these in your hand, you're going to have to resource it or hope that the Luke gets taken out. But it is a good card. It's likely going to see a moderate amount of competitive play because of the resource advantage it does give you, even if it is defeated. So your opponent has to defeat it twice in order to get it off the board, and that isn't necessarily terrible. I think this is a good card. Still a little wary of its high piloting cost, and because it doesn't provide as much benefit as something like Chewie does. But you know, someone's gonna build a deck that has this card as its forefront. It's gonna win a bunch of games with it, and then y'all get to tell me that it's a good card. And you know what? I agree, it is a good card, but I'm still not sure. The second preview is a free event. We have Salvage, 0-cost command supply event. Play a vehicle from your discard pile, paying its cost, then deal 1 damage to it. This is an uncommon, number 121 out of 262 in JTL. If your big ship or medium-sized ship was destroyed, play Salvage, bring it to the forefront, throw a damage on it, and you're good to go. This is actually a very good card. This is going to see a lot of play in sealed and draft environments. I think this will actually even see some decent play in Twin Suns, because being able to get stuff out of your discard from that is pretty good. This stacks with abilities that throw cards into your discard pile, so Trench and Afra do it, and that'll stack with things like Palpatine's Return. And because this is just a generic command green card, you don't have to worry about heroism or villainy, so you can do whatever with whatever. You lose a big vehicle, you play the vehicle with Salvage, put 1 point of damage on it, and then you get to do whatever you want in your next turn. And because this is free, all it really does is cost a card from your hand and 1 damage on the unit. This is a great event. We're going to see a couple of great events in in this. Its competitive viability will be interesting. It just depends on how easy it is to defeat vehicles moving forward. And even if all you really get out of it is a Green Squadron A-Wing that can attack on the next turn, that's probably still viable enough to want to run a few copies of these in your vehicle decks. Our first of our final 2 leaders is a character that not a lot of people know about. Let's just get right to it. We have Kazuda Xiono. I believe that's how the name is pronounced. I apologize, I haven't watched enough Star Wars Resistance. Best pilot in the galaxy. Nobody expected that subtext for this card. Cunning, heroism, resistance pilot leader. Action, exhaust this leader. A friendly unit loses all abilities for this round. Take an extra action after this one. As an epic action on 4 resources, you can flip into a 2/5 or a pilot that gives +3/+3 to the vehicle it is piloting. This is a rare, number 18 out of 262 in JTL. On the flip side, we have text for both versions of the character, and it's basically the same thing. They both give, on attack, choose any number of friendly units. They all lose all abilities for this round. The upgrade just also makes it a leader unit and gives that unit the on attack text. That's the same thing here. +3/+3, resistance and pilot traits to the upgrade. What does Kaz do? Kaz basically makes it so that if you have negative abilities on your character, say somebody gave one of your units Sentinel or somebody gave one of your units Bounty, you can use Kaz's ability on either side to blank the text box on that character so that they get no, on that unit, so they get no abilities. They just have their basic power and health, and anything that's added by an upgrade that is not an ability that attaches to the specific unit itself. So if the upgrade says attached unit gains, that doesn't do it. But if it says when this thing does, or just bonus text, that does not get negated by Kaz's ability. It's being ruled the same way like the Spec Force Soldier did for Sentinel. If you lose an ability, you cannot regain it until the losing ability falls off. So if you have Sentinel and Kaz blanks your character, that character cannot gain Sentinel by any means. Same thing for Bounty, any other keyword, any other text whatsoever. There's some cards that benefit with this. I was thinking we were going to see something like a Vanilla Matters strategy, where if you have nothing in your text box, you gain bonuses based upon having nothing in your text box that are generated by other cards. It doesn't seem that to be the case. It seems that our design is undercosted, overpowered cards with huge downsides to them, which we have 2 of them coming up. We'll check those out in a minute. Kaz is an interesting leader. We'll have to see exactly how he can benefit from these strategies in this set, if he can benefit at all. Next up, we have 2 previews by way of Nerd of the Rings. Link to their Twitter post in the description below. 2 cards, Space Unit and a Ground Unit, both mesh with Kaz's abilities very well. Let's start with the Space Unit. We have Fireball, an explosion with wings, 2 cost, Cunning, Heroism, Space Unit, 3 power, 3 health, resistance, vehicle, fighter traits, ambush keyword. When this unit, when the regroup phase starts, deal 1 damage to this unit. An uncommon, number 198 out of 262 in JTL. 2 cost 3/3 in space is incredible. The downside is that this effectively defeats itself at the regroup phase, because if you do ambush in, you're probably going to be ambushing into something that has 2 power or more. So if it doesn't defeat itself by its ambush effect, it will defeat itself with its regroup phase ability. However, if you ambush with Fireball and then you use Kaz's ability to negate its text, that means that it won't take the damage and it can't survive if it survived its ambush in the first place. Kaz's combo with this card is a little underwhelming, but the Fireball by itself actually is an incredible Cunning Heroism card, because it's effectively a 2 cost, deal 3 damage to a space unit, quote unquote, event in your hand. And that's quite good. Even if it does defeat itself, you still get that extra board presence by being able to ambush into something that's in space, and then if it survives, it takes the damage. If it doesn't survive, you pay 2 to deal 3 damage, and that's a good exchange for units taking damage in space. I actually do expect us to see some level of competitive play because of that combo, but otherwise it's probably going to be limited to specifically Kaz decks if it gets played in any way, shape, or form at all. Like I said, I think there's competitive viability for this card by itself, but this card and Kaz is not a good enough combo to justify playing a leader that is as wonky as it is, and a unit that really only does one thing. The second preview from Nerd of the Rings is a card very similar to Fireball, but it's a ground unit. We have Contracted Hunter, 3 cost Cunning ground unit, 4 power, 4 health, Underworld Bounty Hunter, Ambush, so same effect. When the regroup phase starts, defeat this unit. This is an uncommon, number 216 out of 262 in JTL. Contracted Hunter comes out for 3 with ambushes in, knocks out something with 4 health or less, or deals damage to something that has more than 4 health, and then during the regroup phase, you defeat it. You can contract ambush, then use Kaz's ability to negate the regroup phase ability, and then move on with your life until the next turn. Or you can play this on 4 resources, 3 for contracted Hunter, and then McClunky it back to your hand to do the extra damage to something that you wouldn't have been able to kill otherwise. This is a decent enough card in an Underworld deck, but I don't think it has enough viability in something like Kaz to be an exceptional card in a combo that requires multiple actions in order to be able to survive. This one may actually survive an engagement it gets into because there's not a whole lot of super viable 4 damage units that'll be dealing damage back to it on 3, but some do exist. But a 3 cost basically deleted unit makes this an open fire that can bypass things that allow you to not damage the unit, right? So there's some interesting interactions with here, but I don't necessarily think this is strong enough to warrant competitive level play. Underworld, combo with McClunky, sure, but I feel like a lot of people felt that was going to be the same thing with Evazan, and Evazan didn't really work out very well either. Next up, we have another rare base, courtesy of FFG Socials. We have here Lake Country. This is a 34 health base. It is a rare, number 31 out of 262 in JTL. Notice something you're missing? You're missing a text box, but it's an epic action base. No, it's not. It's got 34 health. Where's the downside? The downside is you don't get an aspect on your base. This is actually a fairly interesting design because it means that if you don't need your second aspect, just take one of these to gain 4 extra health, which potentially can give you an extra action or a whole extra round if your opponent can't clear you to be able to do other things. This actually might be a very strong limited base if you can pull it in draft or sealed, because if you want to focus into just one set of colors, one color from your hero or from your leader, Lake Country can make it so that you can get some extra health on your base, which sometimes is necessary in order to be able to win those grindy draft and sealed games. This is also a very interesting Twin Suns base because it means that you start out with more health, which means you have a higher chance of winning the game outright towards the end by having more health. And since you already have 2 aspects coming from the 2 different leaders that you're running, if you want to run double single, so 2 yellows, you can do that, 2 greens, 2 reds, 2 blues, or you could run your yellow, red, yellow, green, yellow, blue, any combination thereof, and still have your aspects to not have to worry about having to pull a 3rd aspect or double up on another single aspect. And you get the Lake Country, which gives you 34 health. This is a very interesting design. I'm excited to see what people do with this card specifically, because I'm kind of thinking about it for Hera. Since I don't necessarily need double green, having the ECL would be handy, but having the 4 extra base health might be even better. Next up, we have an iconic ship coming by way of JTL and the FFG Socials. We are looking at Razor Crest, Ride for Hire. This is a 4-cost cunning space unit, 3 power, 5 health, Mandalorian vehicle and transport. When a pilot attaches to this unit, you may return a non-leader unit that costs 2 or less, or an exhausted non-leader unit that costs 4 or less to its owner's hand. This is an uncommon, number 223 out of 262 in JTL. This meshes with the Mandalorian pilot because that allows you to exhaust your opposing units, which means that when you attach the Mandalorian to this, you can use his effect first, and then use this effect to return whatever you exhausted, so long as it costs 4 or less. And then it actually also aids the Mandalorian leader strategy. When you attach any pilot, because it is an upgrade to this, you can use the Mandalorian leader's ability to exhaust something with 4 health or less on the leader side, 6 health or less on the unit side, and then if it costs less than what it's asking for on the Razor Crest, you can bounce that back to your opponent's hand. It's a pretty interesting ship. It doesn't mesh well with the yellow Han deck that we're getting with the Spotlight deck because it is an even cost, but it might mesh with other ones, other Mandalorian decks or other decks that want to utilize the ability to return units back to your opponent's hand. You can disappear tokens, the token units like TIEs, X-Wings, Clone Trooper tokens, and Battle Droid tokens with this regardless because they all cost 0, or you can knock out some of your opponent's lower cost things and hope that that does enough work for you to be able to push damage through with something like the Razor Crest or something else. Interesting, but probably not good. Next up, we've got a combo ground unit / pilot, much like most of these cards are, but this one does something fairly different from the other pilots. we have Sidon Ithano, I believe is the name of this character, the Crimson Corsair. This is a 2-cost cunning ground unit, 2 power, 2 health. When played as a unit, you may attach this unit as an upgrade to an enemy vehicle unit without a pilot. -2 power, -2 health is an upgrade on Underworld Pilot. This is a rare, number 213 out of 262 in JTL. This is actually one of the first of a few cards we'll see that have an effect that they're not pilots automatically, but their ground unit effect will make them a pilot as a result of playing them as a ground unit. So it's a 2/2 for 2, which is not great, but the fact that it can effectively kill any 2 health enemy vehicle that doesn't have a pilot on it means it actually is a fairly interesting piece of removal, and as a backup it at least drops onto the ground as a 2/2 with Underworld. So starting off the bat, if you just need something on the board to threaten your opponent's presence, you can throw Sidon on the board, and then at a later point when your opponent drops a vehicle, you can McClunky this back to your hand and then play it again to be able to drop this onto that vehicle so long as it doesn't have a pilot. It's a fairly interesting design. This is a character that was seen in maybe 16 seconds of film in The Force Awakens, but has seen so many different interpretations of the character in different games and media. It's the Boba Fett effect without being on screen as long as Boba Fett is, which is fairly interesting. But I like this card a lot. It's rare, so it's going to see some play. You're not going to see it a lot in Limited because of the fact that it is rare, but it is a good anti-vehicle tech if you can whittle down some of those vehicles and they don't already have pilots on them. And with that, we have our final leader for Jump to Lightspeed, our Red Villainy common leader. So this is our draft archetype leader, sealed archetype leader. This is a character we've seen before. We talked a little bit about it. I don't know too much about them themselves outside of the fact that they look real cool with their uniform and their costume. So we are looking at Major Vonreg, Red Baron, Aggression, Villainy, First Order Pilot traits. As an action, you can exhaust this leader. You may play a vehicle unit from your hand, paying its cost. If you do, give another unit +1/+0 for this phase. As an epic action on 4, you can deploy the leader into a 2/5 or deploy it onto a friendly vehicle unit without pilot on it for +3/+3 to that vehicle. This is a common, number 11 out of 262. And the unit side, it's a blank 2/5 on 4, so you almost never want to drop it as a ground unit, but as a leader pilot upgrade, attached unit is a leader unit. It gains on attack. You may give another unit in this arena +1/+0 for this phase, and then +3/+3 as the pilot itself. While Phasma is our overall first order leader that's in that rare slot for Aggression, Villainy, Red Villainy, Major Vonreg is our pilot's Red Villainy build that wants you to just run a bunch of vehicles. It's not specifically saying first order, but there are plenty of first order vehicles that allow you to do cool stuff. And then you get Major Vonreg himself, which allows you to play vehicles from your hand and give +1/+0 to a different unit that phase. So first round, it's not going to be that important, but rounds 2, 3, 4, and so on, you can play the vehicle, do extra damage with your leader ability, and then flipping on the other side as long as he's continuing to attack. You get that support with your squadrons attacking in multiple angles to be able to do cool stuff with Major Vonreg. I don't know that Vonreg is the best pilot, but I think out of all the pilots that we've seen, Vonreg is going to be in the top 5 of playable archetypes for this set. I think we have 4 really viable pilots in this set, and those 4 are going to be Wedge, Vader, Vonreg, and Rio Durant. I think the rest of them don't necessarily have enough strength, even though Luke is protected in his vehicle from upgrade removal. I think that his cost is too high to justify throwing him out. Being able to throw your leaders out, leader upgrades on 4 and 5 are going to be super important. We already know that 7-cost leaders just don't really hold enough to the meta to be able to do some stuff. So I don't know that Vonreg himself is going to be meta, but I'm excited to see somebody try him out. I do think that Phasma is the better first order leader because she just does trigger off of more first order stuff and is more relevant to what she can do on any given turn, being able to use her tempo to use her leader ability to do more damage. But Vonreg is really cool, super excited. We've got a tie coming out for him. We've got a couple of other things. This leader and I think Vader are probably going to be definitely the best villainy pilot leaders. Next up, we have 2 previews by way of Jedi News. Link to their article in the description below. We've got a space unit that ties directly into the leader we just saw, and an event that helps an overall strategy that is also kind of interesting. Let's check out the unit first. We have Vonreg's TIE Interceptor, ace of the First Order, 3 cost aggression villainy space unit, 3 power, 4 health, First Order vehicle and fighter traits. While this unit has 4 or more power, it gains Overwhelm, and while it has 6 or more power, it gains Raid 1. This is an uncommon, number 137 out of 262 in JTL. Vonreg's TIE Interceptor is definitely designed to be piloted by Major Vonreg himself, because the TIE Interceptor coming out on 3, Vonreg flipping onto it at 4, making it a 6-7, also gives it Overwhelm, and also gives it that Raid 1, making it a 7-7 on attack. So it's a very strong play, so long as your opponent doesn't immediately remove the unit or the pilot on the unit. Being able to set yourself up to drop a Kijimi Patroller or a Special Forces TIE Fighter or even a TIE Bomber on your 2 resource, and then on your 3 resource dropping Vonreg's TIE Interceptor using Vonreg's ability to give your other unit +1, and then potentially doing it again with another cheap vehicle to give your Vonreg's TIE Interceptor +1, then flipping and dropping Vonreg onto the TIE Interceptor, giving it a total of 8-7 on attack with the other ability, and then giving one of your other units +1/+0 to be able to attack in that action as well. There's a lot of early game pressure that Vonreg can do, so you need to be able to do as much damage as possible. That's why Kijimi Patrollers is really good, because you get 2 units out of it. That's why the Special Forces TIE is good, because if your opponent has the initiative first and starts with the space unit, you can drop that Special Forces TIE and then attack with it directly into the base, and then continue doing that round after round with the bonuses from Vonreg. Overwhelm allows this unit to be able to defeat one of your opponent's space units and still deal damage to your opponent's base, and giving that extra raid, giving the extra power bonus. There's a lot of combo potential here. So your 2, 3, 4 plays are going to be very important with Vonreg, and this is a key piece. If you don't have this piece, you're probably not going to be as strong as you want, but given that it's an uncommon, you're actually in a very good space to be able to do this aggressive deck right off the bat, and this is a really cool card. If Vonreg's TIE is an early game play, this event is a late game play. We have Scramble Fighters, a 7-cost command villainy supply event. Create 8 TIE Fighter tokens and ready them. They can't attack bases for this phase. This is a legendary, number 92 out of 262 in JTL. We've seen an effect like this before on the doorstep, allows you to drop 3 droids and ready them. They can, however, just straight up attack. Scramble Fighters gives you more TIEs for less cost, all 1/1s though, but they make it so you can't attack bases. So ideally, you're trying to use this as a way to just attack, and clear opposing space units off the board. 8 TIE tokens for 7. It could be interesting. I'm not entirely sure if this is worth a legendary slot, but it is an interesting design. I think there's a little bit of dissonance when it comes to what they want you to allow to be able to attack with ready and what they don't want you to allow to be able to attack with ready, if that makes any sense. But 8 TIE Fighter tokens gives you 8/8 on the board in 8 different instances at 7 cost, all ready to go. You want to slam these into your opponent's units. So just scramble the fighters and start attacking into your opponent's units and hope that that you can maybe keep a couple of these thereafter. What's better than 1 Superstar Destroyer? 2 Superstar Destroyers. We have here Annihilator, Tag's flagship. 11 cost Vigilance Villainy Space Unit, 12 power, 12 health, Imperial Vehicle Capital Ship. When deployed and when defeated, you may defeat an enemy unit. If you do, search its controller's deck and hand for each card with that unit's name and discard them. They shuffle their deck. This is a legendary, number 41 out of 262 in JTL. I had to do some lookup on this to figure this out, because as far as I was concerned, in canon, there was only 1 Superstar Destroyer, and that was the Executor. It turns out in the 2015 Darth Vader comic, there was another. This was piloted by Tag, who I also found out as a result of that comic, which I own, I just haven't read completely. Tag survived the destruction of the Death Star, and this was him while he was the supreme commander of the Empire, and Vader goes with him. Eventually, he dies. This gets sent off to a different section and is taken over by pirates later on in a book written by Claudia Gray. Lots of interesting stuff as it pertains to a vehicle or a ship that I did not know existed. A lot of this also comes from Legends, but it does look like the specific version of the ship that's being used is the cannon version. So, background aside, we have here another finisher for control decks. Thankfully, it is a very prohibitively high cost at 11 resources. If you get to 11 resources in control, you're probably going to win the game. Your opponent should just scoop and go on to the next game, right? That way you're not wasting a bunch of time in both receiving a double loss. The fact that this thing is an Avenger on crack is absolutely insane, because you basically get to take all of your opponent's units that match the same name and get rid of them. There's a magic effect that does this. I can't remember what it's called specifically. It's not very relevant in Commander because you only run one copy of cards, but in standard / premier / constructed / whatever you want to call it for each of the different games that it's called, Annihilator is a very effective tool that can remove your opponent's biggest unit on the board when it comes out and remove all other copies of that unit from your opponent's ability to play them outside of their discard pile. This card is nuts. It is completely unnecessary. It should not exist because, again, I'll say it to the moon. We do not need more control pieces. Thankfully, because this is an 11 cost, it's going to be expensive, which means aggro is probably going to remain king, because I don't see mid-range having the opportunity to clear out control fast enough to stop them from getting something like this. But if you're playing an aggro deck, you could sweep under, clear them out before they hit 11, and just try your best to get that going and not deal with this being on your opponent's side of the board. Because if they get this down, you're pretty much dead anyway. Next up, we have 2 cards coming by way of Fantha tracks. Link in the description below to their article talking about these 2 cards. 2 very interesting cards. We have a unit and an event. Let's start with the event that actually represents one of my favorite themes from The Last Jedi. They hate that ship. This is a 1-cost aggression heroism innate event. Text says an opponent creates 2 TIE Fighter tokens and readies them. Then play a vehicle unit from your hand. It costs 3 less. This is rare number 155 out of 262 in JTL. The theme of Last Jedi is legends matter, right? It's not necessarily the person or the thing. It's what that person does and what that thing represents, right? This is that same thing. Your opponent is able to get 2 TIE fighters, so this is actually, and readies them. So it is a bit more impactful than Jesse was in set 3 with his 3-cost 4/4 with raid 1, but your opponent creates 2 battle droids. Because your opponent gets these ready, they can use them to whittle down your ship, but if they've already claimed, or taken the initiative, excuse me, then you get this and there's no upside for them. So you can effectively play any of your 3-cost vehicles for 1 utilizing this, or scale it down depending on what you need. And hopefully you can get some value out of doing that and getting that early. It's like a sneak attack, but you don't lose your unit. Your opponent just gains units as a result. So it'll be interesting to see if this sees any play. Jesse didn't really see a whole lot of play, even though a lot of people, myself included, thought that it was going to see some play, given that initially I didn't think Jesse was going to see play, and then I changed my mind, and then I should have stuck with my guts originally because, you know, giving your opponent's units isn't necessarily the greatest thing. But they hate that ship might be interesting because you do want those vehicles. You can throw pilots. You throw this in wedge. You get your vehicle down. You throw your pilot for cheap. And then your opponent has a big unit that they can't just take out with 2 TIE fighters. And you got to hope that you can do something with that. So interestingly enough, you can set this up where on 3 resources, you can play They Hate That Ship, you can play the Millennium Falcon down, and then you can use Wedge's ability to put Chewie on the Millennium Falcon, and now you've got a really big unit that's hard to take down outside of just removing the upgrade from play with whatever cheap upgrade removal you have. As I talk more about this, I'm a little bit more excited about what it does. It is worth trying. And you know what? That's pretty good. Next up is a legendary pilot, which also happens to be another legendary card. We have here Darth Vader, Scourge of Squadrons, 6-cost aggression villainy ground unit. He's just a 7/7 on the ground, but for 3 aggression and villainy, you get a +3/+3 Force, Imperial, Sith, and Pilot upgrade, which says attached unit gains on attack, you may deal 1 damage to a unit. If a unit is defeated this way, you may deal 1 damage to a unit or base. This is a legendary, number 142 out of 262 in JTL. Vader can't catch a break. His units end up all being legendaries, and while that is because he's a legendary character, maybe cut the guy a break and allow people to get some cool Vader stuff without having to break the bank for it, right? Ground unit, it's a 7/7 for 6. That's nothing really to really write home about, but being able to give yourself +3/+3 for 3 and an additional damage that if it clears out a unit can do another damage. It's very similar to the original Vader ability on the leader side of the leader card from SOR. Works a little bit more by giving your pilot your vehicle some extra bonuses as a result of being a pilot. It's a cool card. I don't know if this is actually going to see a lot of play. We'll have to see if piloting ends up being super worth it. Is this worth it in a green-red Vader deck? Probably. Is this worth it in a red deck that wants to run extra pilots like Major Vonreg? Potentially. You do have the ability to give your other units additional bonuses as a result, and you can, as a squadron-based deck, you can kind of mix these things together to get some interesting stuff going. On 2/19, February 19th, FFG brought to us their normal developer draft, where a bunch of the developers and Xander Tabler get together and talk about the draft process and do an actual draft and then play a couple draft games. There were some fun and interesting things there. This is where we get to see a lot of cards, and it's exciting, and there's new stuff going on, all kinds of other stuff. Also, because it's a draft, you're primarily going to see draft chaff. Cards that are designed to be good in draft, limited, sealed, those types of formats, but not necessarily cards that are designed to be good in the overall game as a whole itself. There were a lot of cards that were revealed, and this would take me far longer than any of you care to see the analysis for me to cover all of them, so that's not what we're going to do at all. We are going to go over, I believe it's 12 or 13 cards that came from that stream that I thought are interesting, or they have interesting designs, they could be good, or they're cool characters and ships that I like a lot myself. So it's kind of a personal thing where there's cool stuff for me. There are a couple of cards in here that I think are very good. The rest of the cards that were as part of the stream are not good. They're binder fodder, coaster fodder, all kinds of other stuff. It's the normal thing. When you design underpowered cards, they end up not being used and end up filling bulk boxes for the rest of eternity, right? We're going to go through these one by one very quickly, much like we did in the last episode. We're going to go over them, talk a little bit about them, and have some cool stuff. Let's start off with Close the Shield Gate. This is a 1-cost vigilance event. Choose a base. The next time damage will be dealt to it this phase, prevent that damage. I don't have the card number or the rarity, but this is actually quite a good card because it means that if you know your opponent has one big pocket of damage coming up next, it's the last thing they can do in a turn, and you have an action to do something beforehand. You can close the shield gate, and then that gives you an opportunity to do something to protect yourself. Or if there's multiple packets of damage coming and you can't really take any of them, close the shield gate means that they'll just pick the lowest packet, throw it at you, and then it's done. But they actually have to do something to be able to peel this effect off your base. So it is a good card. It does represent the Scarif Shield gate there for Rogue One, which is really cool. And that, you know, that's pretty much all you need sometimes, right? Great limited card. We have Flanking Fang Fighter here. This is a 3-cost aspectless space unit, 2 power, 3 health, Mandalorian vehicle and fighter. While you control another fighter unit, this unit gains Raid 2. I'm sure this is a common, it could be an uncommon. The reason why I brought it up, it's a Mandalorian card. I'm throwing 3 of these in my Mandalorian deck whenever that comes back. It's never coming back. Mandalorians are never going to be a viable format in the game whatsoever. This is actually a great Twin Suns card because it's another 3-cost thing that you can throw into your Twin Suns deck for that early curve to be able to do some stuff. It meshes well with the Disabled Fang Fighter, which is also a fighter, and if any other Mandalorian fighters come up, it will give you extra damage. Outside of that, in terms of limited, there are a lot of fighters in this set, so this can end up being a 4/3 on attack if you control another fighter while you get to do things. So that's pretty good, in my opinion. We've got the Kimolga Heavy Fighter. This is a 4-cost cunning space unit, 3 power, 4 health, underworld vehicle fighter. When played, deal 3 indirect damage to a player. Exhaust each unit damaged this way. So this is your start of round card that you drop this on the board. More cunning indirect damage. We haven't seen as much red indirect damage, but a lot of yellow indirect damage, so I guess yellow is the indirect damage deck. The reason why I showcase this off is because this is one of my favorite ships from Star Wars Galaxies. It was a very fun ship. You could get the regular version of it, which was an okay kind of middling ship, but there was a heavier version that allowed you to equip a lot more equipment onto it, a lot more ship parts, a lot more things that did more damage, more armor, more shields, and that was really cool. So Kimolga here, I believe this has also been in Star Wars X-Wing. We have Out the Airlock, a 5-cost vigilance tactic event. Give a unit -5/-5 for this phase. This is a common, number 79 out of 262. Control card. This is actually better than Vanquish in almost every single way because this will be able to clear out your opponent's leaders if you can do a little bit of damage to them. It also makes it so that you can stop damage coming your way with that extra additional -5 power. Lots of interesting stuff here. Yet another card we don't need, but it is a card that does exist, and I feel bad for this droid because he got shunted out of an airlock, and that's not very nice. We've got Pantoran Starship Thief here. This is a 2-cost command villainy ground unit, 2 power, 2 health. When played, you may pay 3. If you do, attach this unit as an upgrade to a fighter or transport unit without a pilot on it. Take control of that unit. And then the pilot upgrade only gives it +0/+0. When this upgrade detaches from a unit, that unit's owner takes control of it. So this is actually genuinely a better Traitorous. Because it's not limited to 3 cost or less. You have to pay 5 total to be able to do it, but it's also a 2-cost 2/2 ground unit if there's no target you want to take over with Traitorous. But the fact that it can take any fighter and or any transport, that is huge, because there are a lot of fighters and a lot of transports that have very high costs that are very good to be able to use. I like this card a lot. This is actually a HARK in the background, 290. That's pretty cool. And the Pantorans are neat as well. So this is a very good card. We have Punchant, a 1-cost cunning tactic event. Attack with a vehicle unit. It gets +2/+0 for this attack. This is a common 231 out of 262 in JTL. It's Surprise Strike for 1 less cost and 1 less power, but it's specifically for vehicles. Yellow gets all the attack events. This is a great card. This will be in every vehicle deck that can run yellow. Because why not? This is one of those personal cards that I like a lot. This is a 3-cost cunning ground unit called Rafa Martez, Shrewd Sister. She's got 3 power, 3 health. She's Underworld trait. When played and on attack, deal 1 damage to a friendly unit and ready a resource. So you have the ability to go resource positive with Rafa, and you're able to do other things as a result of that. And you can McClunky it back to your hand with that resource that you've readied if you really need to, if you really want to get those things down to be able to do that. But Rafa can stick on the board and continue doing this so long as she stays on the board. The Martez sisters were part of 3 or 4 episodes of season 7 of the Clone Wars. It was a little break in between the beginning of the season, which was the Big Bad Batch episodes, and the end of the season, which was the Siege of Mandalore. And I know a lot of people don't like these 2 characters. I do, because I think they do show a really cool aspect of Star Wars that's not really seen, in as much stuff as you would expect. This was also a love letter to those of us who were desperately wanting to see Star Wars 1313 before Disney acquired Star Wars, and that game was completely canceled, and we've never gotten anything similar to it since. This set of episodes takes place on floor 1313, level 1313 for Coruscant, and that's why a lot of people do end up liking it, because it's like, hey, we recognize you, we appreciate you. Next, we have one of my favorite capital ship types. We have the Rebellious Hammerhead. This is a 6-cost aggression heroism space unit, 5 power, 7 health, rebel vehicle and capital ship. When played, you may deal damage to a unit equal to the number of cards in your hand. This is a common. Foils apparently have a different number scale for whatever reason. That's probably as a result of the Carbonite packs. So whatever. There's no set number on this as it stands. R.I.P. Parker. Rebellious Hammerhead is a cool ship. We saw those in Rebels when the Rebels stole 3 of them from Princess Leia. Stole, quote unquote. And then we got to see one of these in action during Rogue One when it smashed into a Star Destroyer, which crushed another Star Destroyer, which destroyed the Scarif Shield Gate and allowed them to get on there and get the transmission back up. 5/7 for 6 isn't necessarily anything to sneeze at, but it's also not the greatest stat line. But being able to deal damage to a unit equal to the number of cards in your hand. Red likes to draw cards. If you can continue drawing cards and you have a full grip when you play this, that's a lot of damage coming down that just this thing smashes into. And it's still a 5/7 in space on the board after 6. Next up, we have another legendary. This is the Shadowcaster, Just Business. This is a 6-cost aggression space unit, 4 power, 7 health, underworld vehicle transport traits. When a friendly unit is defeated, you may use all of its when defeated abilities again. This is a legendary, I want to say 105 out of 262 in JTL. This is the ship that Xiono used in Star Wars Rebels. This Lancercraft Shadowcaster type, or Lancercraft caster fighter, whatever it's called, was also used by Asajj Ventress. So this looks like it should be teaming up with Thrawn, but I don't think that Thrawn wants to go blue-red, but it is an option. And if you have other friendly when defeated things that are on the board, which red does actually have quite a few of, Shadowcaster allows you to effectively double that. And you know, that's pretty good. Next, we have the Silver Angel. Trace's Hope. This is the ship of the Martez sisters. 2-cost of Vigilance space unit, 2 power, 3 health, fringe vehicle transport. When 1 or more damage is healed from this unit, you may deal 1 damage to a space unit. This is an uncommon. I don't know the number in JTL. I didn't bring this in because it was a good unit. I brought it in because it was a cool unit. It's part of that little arc there from the Martez sisters. It's a cool little ship. If you can heal damage on it, throw something on it that gives you more health and continue to heal, you can deal more damage to space units. Pretty decent combo combo card with Obi-Wan. Then we have System Shock, the in-set counter to the main mechanic of the set, which is piloting. We have a 1-cost aggression event. Defeat a non-leader upgrade attached to a unit. If you do, deal 1 damage to that unit. This is a common, number 125 out of 262 in JTL. This is your limited removal of pilots when you do your draft and sealed. It's 1 cost, it's in aggression. Obviously, players who have collections are going to be using Confiscate instead, but why not both? Confiscate to defeat leader upgrades and System Shock to defeat non-leader upgrades. Also, it's not specifically pilots for this. It's just said non-leader upgrades. So you can defeat lightsabers, you can defeat experience tokens, you can defeat shield tokens, you can defeat academy trainings, you can defeat nameless Fowlers, whatever upgrades on one of your opponent's units. As long as it's not a leader pilot, System Shock goes, yeah, and gets it off the board and deals a damage to that unit. Next, we have Trace Martez, Trusting Sister, 3-cost Vigilance ground unit, 2 power, 5 health. That's all she has for regular stats. That's about average for a 3-cost. But for 1 Vigilance piloting, she can attach as a 1/2 to any vehicle without a friendly pilot. Attached unit gains on attack. You may heal 2 total damage from any number of units. It's an uncommon, I don't know the number in JTL. Combos very well with the ship. You can take some damage because it does give you extra health, and then your on attack is able to heal some damage from the ship that deals damage when it's healed, and then on any other unit you can heal another damage, or just heal 2 off of the Fallen Angel, and then you're good to go. Our last card here is actually a fairly interesting design that probably should have been in set 3, but it's in set 4. We have the War Juggernauts. This is a 6-cost aggression ground unit, 3 power, 7 health, Republic vehicle, tank, traits, tank. This unit gets +1/+0 for each damaged unit, and then when played, you may deal 1 damage to each of any number of units. This is an uncommon, number 170 out of 262 in JTL. This serves 2 purposes. If your opponent has gone wide with TIE fighters or with battle droids, War Juggernaut clears them all off the board, unless they get some sort of health bonus from some other source. But it also damages opposing units, and in combination with Energy Conversion Lab, you can throw this War Juggernaut down because it does cost 6. You can deal damage to all of the units on the board, and if there's 3 units, there's 6 units, there's 9 units. If they're all damaged, this thing gets +1 for each damaged thing, and then you can throw the damage into that. Let's say you have Tarkin on the board, which gives your vehicles, I believe it's +1 and Overwhelm. There's a lot of synergy here when it comes to what you can do with the War Juggernaut. It's a cool card. I don't think it's going to see competitive play, but someone's going to sneak this in with a huge Overwhelm attack and knock out a player, and they're going to be like, what just happened to me? And that's pretty darn cool. We've got one last batch of creator previews, which is the final preview of the preview season, so that's why this is after all the stream stuff. I thought I was finished. Right when I was out, they pulled me right back in. We got 2 previews courtesy of Unplayable. We've got a unit and an aspectless card, which is an interesting design and our first ever of a specific thing. So let's start with the unit first. We have L337, get out of my seat. 3-cost Vigilance Heroism ground unit, 3 power, 3 health. If this unit would be defeated, you may instead attach her as an upgrade to a friendly vehicle unit without a pilot. She's no longer a unit, defeat all upgrades, remove all damage. Or you could just straight up piloting for the same cost, giving whatever she pilots a +3/+3. She's got Underworld, she's got Droid, she's got pilot traits. She's a rare 49 out of 262 in JTL. This is actually a reverse perfect pilot design, rather than the pilot itself getting a bonus for being chucked out of the vehicle. She gets a bonus for being played to the ground and then going to the vehicle of your choice, whether that's a ground unit or a space unit. It's a great design. I think this is actually going to see a fair amount of play in terms of if you want vehicle decks. It'll be good in rows. It'll be good in your basic piloting decks. I think it'll probably be good in Lando if Lando sees any play. I don't know that this is going to get played in things like Luke or Wedge, but she's available to be used as a Vigilance, as a blue card for blue decks, and she is pretty cool, so I think it's a very good design. And the final preview, which encapsulates one of the most important MacGuffins in the history of MacGuffins, in addition to one of the best scenes in a Star Wars movie ever, we have here Death Star Plans. That's the little MacGuffin. 2-cost aspectless upgrade. When attached unit is attacked, not defeated, attacked, the attacking player takes control of this upgrade and attaches it to a unit they control. The attached unit gains the first unit you play each round costs 2 less. This gives you +0/+0. It is an item. This is a legendary. Number 260 out of 262 in JTL. Lots of fun stuff about this. It's the hallway scene from Rogue One where Vader kills everybody and the Death Star plans go to Leia so she can get them to the rebellion so they can use the Death Star plans to send Luke up to blow up a Death Star. It's literally an entire saga's worth of stuff happening within a couple of minutes. In addition to this, is our first legendary aspect list card. And for a legendary, it's actually quite good. This is one of those reduced cost anthems that you'll see in other games, but the fact that you can take it from somebody by just attacking into it, don't stick it on a Sentinel, that means that this will bounce back and forth in between some interesting stuff. So in terms of Premier, I actually think this will see some play. I think that some decks will be willing to allow it to give you the reduced cost, and if your opponent attacks into it, attack back into that unit to reclaim your Death Star plans, and just keep going back and forth until the unit is finally defeated that has this that wasn't attacked, whether it's through damage, it's sent back to the hand, or whatever the case may be, and then this goes away. I think this is a fun card. This is also going to be a very good and a very fun Twin Suns card because it's going to pass around between the 4 players in a bunch of stuff, and all you got to do is attack a unit in order to be able to take control of it. It's like the Monarch, but instead of drawing cards, it's reducing the cost of the first unit you play each round. Notably, like Relentless, if you play a unit, then take this, you lose the reduction of the cost because you've already played your first unit that round, so you can't do that. So make sure you attack into this first, and make sure you can keep it, and then get your bonus discount of 2. It's a fun card. Is it a good card? I think it's a good card. Is it a competitive card? We shall see. And there you have it. Lots of previews, a bunch of regular previews, and then a blitz of stream previews. Make sure to check out the deck builders of your choice. My deck builder choice is swdb.com for all of your deck building needs. Lots of fun stuff there. I'm not paid to promote that. It's just a good site to use. Fun stuff coming out of JTL. I still think our 4 pilot leaders that are the best are Wedge, Vader, Rio, and Vonreg. It'll be interesting to see. Lots of decks I really want to build, which is not what the case was with set 3, although I did end up building a couple more decks in set 3 than I did in set 2. So we'll have to see what's coming up. I will do Hera at some point. I'm definitely gonna do Phasma. I'm definitely gonna do Wedge. But like Rio seems like it's a cool deck type. Vonreg seems like it's a cool deck type. Hopefully there's not too many cards shared between each of those different decks going on and going forward. I will be doing, pre-releases are coming soon. I will be doing a box opening of set 4. I'm not ordering the full case like I've done in the past. I am going to keep 1 box in my little collector up there because we got the 1, 2, and 3 over there, plus some of my showcases that you can't really see. And I'm going to try to see if I can get a hold of a Carbonite booster pack or 2. I'm not going to buy the whole box because it just costs too much. It just costs too much. I don't make money off of this. If I did, I would, but I don't, so I can't. Make sure you like this video, comment on what your favorite preview was. Let me know what you think of all the leaders that have come out. We know all of them. We know all 18 leaders. What do you think is going to be the most competitive leader coming out of Jump to Lightspeed? I don't think any of them are actually going to be hyper competitive in the meta. Wedge and Phasma are probably going to be the closest ones. But who knows? Who knows what they're actually Thrawn. Thrawn's probably going to be a pretty good leader. That might replace one of the control archetypes. Anyway, let me know if you agree with that or not. Let me know if you think that there should be more control cards. Spoiler, there shouldn't, and you're wrong. So don't support control. Subscribe to the Star Wars Unlimited channel for all of your Star Wars Unlimited needs. Thank you very much for joining me. I've been RybackStun. I am very tired, and I will see you in the stars.